take a minute to address something that happened yesterday. I made a post on Instagram about this argument that keeps coming up about how you can't have morality without God. And Christians are very quick to say, oh, this doesn't mean a non-Christian can't be moral. But they don't, in the words of William Lane Craig, have a proper foundation. They can't be rational in their morality without God. And what I was trying to do in my post to say, look, there are a lot of different theories of morality out there. There is divine command theory. There is Kantian deontology. There is, utilitarianism, courtesy of Bentham and Mill and them. And there is my favorite, virtue ethics. There's also nihilism for anyone who cares about that. So there are all of these different foundations for morality that have been discussed for, hundreds, thousands of years. And God is not required for most of them. In fact, the Christian God isn't even required for divine command theory. So, and it was incredible how this was perceived as some kind of like, in at least one instance, as an attack. But this was very confusing to a lot of people, and they said, no, you've got your concept of God wrong. You've got God is, like, by definition the source of morality and of ethics, and nothing is outside of God and these sorts of things. And I think this is coming from otherwise very intelligent people who kind of they can't get over this association they have between God and morality. And in this post blew up into a kind of absurd conversation, like 2007 Facebook style. And then at the end of this conversation, a kind of obscure YouTube channel I follow that drops all kinds of content dropped a 6-minute video clipping Jonathan Haidt talking about the autistic origins of Western morality. And it wound up being the most apropos, appropriate, I think, conclusion to this conversation. And basically what Jonathan Haidt was saying, and for those of you who don't know, Jonathan Haidt is a moral psychologist. This is a guy who has studied psychology in the context of politics, went from being a liberal to a kind of centrist libertarian after discovering the moral foundations of even his own beliefs and those of others. So he's very familiar with moral foundations. He's like the guy to talk about moral foundations. And what he was saying was that when you look at Jeremy Bentham and Immanuel Kant, so the founders of utilitarianism and transcendentalism respectively, what you have are people who are very, very autistic, at least in Bentham's case. Kant was very, on the spectrum. And what that means, what being autistic means here, is high in systematizing and low in empathy. Bentham was apparently maxed out, zero empathy and maximal systematizing. Kant also maximizing, systematizing, a little bit of empathy. But with autistic people, what you have is a extreme discomfort and inability to navigate the organic messiness of social life and of the organic world more generally. And so I'm not sure whether, because I'm not an autism expert or anything, whether systematizing is a cause or an effect of the low empathy, low ability to navigate that social messiness. But in either case, the system emerges as this kind of life preserver, as this lifeboat in an ocean of otherwise unnavigable waters of life and other people. And how do we make sense of it all? Well, you can't have a single system to explain that all. And that's the beauty of virtue ethics, which is one of the things that Hyde points out. He says, what happened to virtue ethics? This was this perfectly functional system that got supplanted by these two, and I would say three, moral systems, deontology, utilitarianism, and Christianity, divine command, which is not really deontology or utilitarianism. I would posit that what we are seeing with Christians who say, but we have to have a transcendent, invincible foundation for morality, or else you can't have morality at all. We need an objective foundation. What you're seeing when you hear people talk like that is a kind of autistic insecurity in the face of the messiness of life. And what you end up with is a morality that is perfect in its isolated, abstract form, and is meaningless and inactionable where the rubber meets the road of actual living. It tells you nothing about how to live because it exists in a different sphere, in a different world than the world we actually live in. So I think there might be a degree of autism in the ethics we see coming out of Aquinas and Anselm and Christianity more broadly, at least as it's practiced and argued for by the men online who might be on the spectrum themselves, who advocate this you can't have morality without God position. A much stronger and less autistic view is to say, there are other moral systems. I just think Christianity is better. I just think Christianity is a more complete system. Yes, virtue ethics is good. Yes, I can see where people are coming from with utilitarianism, but Christianity just takes it up a notch. And what's funny is there's precedent for this. This is exactly how Bishop Robert Barron talks about paganism. He says, yes, paganism is good, but it stops short of as good as it can be. You can take it one step further. And I would invert that. I would say, Christianity is good, but it takes some good things one step too far. It takes things, just a little bit too far. Where you go from having a difference of opinion to being just flat out wrong is when you say you can't be moral without God. And it's the kind of wrong that I think, as Jonathan Hyde points out, comes out of autism and autistic insecurity with the messiness of life that you can't escape if you want to apply it in your life and in the real world.